Witcher is a massive, sprawling fantasy series spanning books and games. But what I find most fascinating is how the franchise took a simple love triangle and turned it into one of the most complicated, romantic entanglements in modern gaming media. And what I want to do today is look at how that happened, how this relationship between Geralt, Yennefer, and Triss became something fans would debate for decades, with each side absolutely convinced their pairing is the right one. And to do this, we need to start with the books themselves. I'm guessing a lot of you know the deal with Geralt and Yennefer, but let's cover it for background. Picture this: Geralt fishing by a river, accidentally pulling up an ancient magic vessel instead of a fish. His buddy Dandelion gets all excited, they fumble it, and boom, there is an angry djinn on the loose. The djinn immediately starts strangling Dandelion, and Geralt needs a powerful sorceress to save his friend's life. And that's when Yennefer of Vengerberg enters the picture. And I think there's two reasons this character works so well. The first is just how instantly vivid she is on the page. She's not your standard fantasy love interest. She's dangerous, ambitious, and as the books repeatedly remind us, smells of lilac and gooseberries. The second is the electric, complicated dynamic between her and Geralt. They're both drawn to each other, but also deeply suspicious of each other's motives. What happens next sets up their entire relationship. Yennefer agrees to help Dandelion, but what she really wants is to capture the djinn for herself. She's willing to risk her life to harness its power, hoping to cure her infertility. When she realizes Geralt still has one wish left, she demands he free the djinn so she can bind it. The problem is, that would get her killed. So, in a split-second decision, Geralt makes a wish that ties both of their futures, literally wishing for their fates to be bound together forever. The djinn wish becomes a massive, looming question mark over their entire relationship. Did Geralt actually force them together with magic? Or did he just save her life in the cleverest way possible? And it's this ambiguity that makes their relationship so fascinating. They're constantly breaking up and getting back together. They fight like crazy, but keep gravitating back to one another. But that same discovery of complexity exists for every strand of their relationship. Whether it's the way Yennefer secretly ensures Geralt gets paid well for his contracts, or how they eventually become surrogate parents to Ciri. And just when you think you understand this relationship dynamic, along comes Triss Merigold to make everything infinitely more complicated. She's Yennefer's best friend, a fellow sorceress, but with a completely different vibe. Warm where Yen is cold, approachable where Yen is intimidating. And what makes this love triangle so messy is how self-aware Triss is about the whole thing. She's heard all about Geralt from Yennefer, probably listened to her friend Ven about their dramatic breakups, and still decides she wants this man for herself. And she doesn't just have a little crush, she goes full high school diary entry infatuated. It's messy, morally complicated, and absolutely perfect for creating the love triangle that would divide fans for years to come. And how did Triss and Geralt's affair actually start? Well, turns out Triss was so curious about what made Yennefer keep coming back to this white-haired monster hunter that she decided to find out for herself. During one of those Geralt-Yennefer breakups, she used a bit of magic to seduce our Witcher friend, who was apparently just looking for some comfort and an escape from his Yen-related heartache. And here's where the emotional imbalance begins. For Triss, this brief fling is everything she'd fantasized about, but for Geralt, it's just a casual rebound that should have stayed within Kaer Morhen's walls. This asymmetry creates a lingering tension that haunts their relationship for years afterward. Triss is left in a terrible position of being hopelessly in love with Geralt, still supposedly friends with Yennefer, and carrying a massive guilt over betraying her friend. Well, maybe not that guilty, since she keeps finding excuses to run into Geralt on his monster hunting jobs, though he maintains a polite but firm distance. Meanwhile, Yennefer's going through intense emotional cycles during their separations, privately depressed and angry, but keeping up a cool, unbothered facade around her sorcerer colleagues. Things get even more awkward when Triss shows up at Kaer Morhen to help train Ciri. In the ancient Witcher fortress, Geralt's trying to play single dad alongside his Witcher brothers, all of them trying to figure out how to raise this extraordinary girl with absolutely zero parenting experience. Despite still harboring these intense feelings for Geralt, Triss actually manages to stay pretty professional, mostly focusing on helping Ciri rather than pursuing her own romantic agenda. What's interesting is what happens when Triss realizes Ciri's magical abilities are way beyond her expertise. She makes a surprisingly mature decision to suggest bringing in the one person who could actually help, Yennefer. I mean, just think about that. Voluntarily inviting your crush's ex-girlfriend, who happens to be more powerful than you, knowing full well they'll probably get back together. That takes some serious character growth. During their travels together, Triss catches a terrible fever that breaks down her emotional walls. In her feverish state, she confesses everything: how much she envies Yennefer, how much she wants Geralt for herself. Our Witcher, being the emotionally stunted guy that he is, gently shuts down the conversation, leaving Triss with all these unresolved feelings. And then Triss has to watch as this perfect little family forms right in front of her. Ciri bonds with both Geralt and Yennefer, while the two gradually rebuild their relationship. Yennefer reveals this surprisingly maternal side that nobody knew she had, showing patience and tenderness with both Ciri and Geralt. Eventually, they acknowledge what we've known all along, that their connection goes deeper than any djinn magic. They're actually in love, despite fighting it for so long. And poor Triss just has to witness all this, maintaining her friendship with both while privately nursing a heartache that she later admits to colleagues was unlike anything she'd ever felt. The books wrap up this romantic saga with a violent sequence in Rivia, where anti-non-human riots break out. Geralt, who literally just announced his retirement to his dwarf buddies, jumps into the chaos to protect innocent non-humans. And in the most ironic twist possible, our legendary monster slayer gets fatally wounded by something as mundane as a pitchfork to the chest. Meanwhile, our magical girl squad is racing into Rivia during this chaos. We've got Yennefer, Triss, and Ciri, who's just had a terrifying premonition about Geralt's death. Yennefer goes full sorceress rage mode on the mob, blasting people left and right to reach her dying Witcher. In a moment of crisis-induced teamwork, the sorceresses combine their powers to unleash Marigold's Hailstorm, which is an epic weather spell that sends the mob running for cover. But they're too late to stop Geralt's injury, finding him already bleeding out in the town square with Ciri holding him. It's a heartbreaking scene that feels like the end of everything we've been following. Then, in one of those perfect fantasy moments, a mysterious unicorn appears from the misty lake. And not just any magical horse, it's Ciri's dimension-hopping unicorn friend. Through this creature's power and Ciri's abilities, they manage to pull Geralt back from death's door in a beautiful, magical moment. Ciri then transports the couple to an idyllic orchard setting for their recovery. Geralt and Yennefer share a tender, perfect moment where he finally tells her he loves her, and she responds simply saying, "I know." And poor Triss is left watching from the sidelines after all her heroic efforts, forced to accept that, in this magical love triangle, she'll always be the third wheel. And that's the end of the complicated romance, right? Well, no, not even close. After the books, CD Projekt Red came along with the first Witcher game and decided to shake everything up. The game opens with a complete narrative swerve. Geralt is discovered near the walls of Kaer Morhen, alive but with zero memory of his past. That means no recollection of Yennefer, their relationship, or anything that happened in the books. What actually happened behind the scenes is wild. After the riot, the Wild Hunt captured Yennefer, and Geralt, being the hopeless romantic he is, offered himself in exchange for her freedom. Eventually, Ciri rescued him and dropped him near Kaer Morhen, but the whole ordeal left him with complete amnesia. At the start of the game, nobody knows any of this backstory. They just see their amnesiac Witcher friend who needs help. And this is where Triss sees her opportunity. She's at Kaer Morhen supposedly helping the Witchers study their mutagens, but suddenly she's face to face with an amnesiac version of the man she's been fawning over across multiple books. When Geralt mentions having foggy memories of loving a sorceress, Triss makes what has to be the most strategically convenient omission in fantasy romance history, just completely failing to mention Yennefer's existence. It's not technically lying, but it's definitely opportunism at its finest. The fortress gets attacked by a mysterious group called Salamandra, who steal the Witcher's secrets and kill a trainee named Leo, kicking off our revenge-fueled adventure. As Geralt heads to Vizima to track them down, Triss becomes his primary connection to the past he can't remember, cementing her position in his new life. Things get more complicated when Geralt encounters a boy named Alvin, who, like Ciri from the books, is a source with dangerous magical abilities. This discovery leads him to seek help from another potential romance option, a young medical student named Shani, creating a whole new love triangle. Shani stands out in Geralt's love life for one reason. She's just a regular medical student with no magic, no political schemes, and no centuries of baggage. In a world where dating usually means navigating sorceress politics or ancient curses, Shani represents a completely normal romance option that probably feels like a vacation to our exhausted Witcher. The drama really kicks into high gear when both women start competing for custody of Alvin. And it's fascinating how their approaches mirror their characters. Triss wants to teach him to control his magical abilities, while Shani offers something radically different, just being a normal kid away from all the magic and politics. What makes Shani different is how grounded she is. She genuinely cares about both Geralt and this random magical child they've picked up, and she's not afraid to call out either Geralt or Triss when they're being ridiculous. The game lets us choose between these two women representing wildly different lives, the magical political intrigue of Triss or the straightforward healing path of Shani. Meanwhile, Vizima is basically burning down around them as racial tensions between humans and non-humans reach a boiling point. At the center of it all is the Order of the Flaming Rose, led by the mysterious Grandmaster Jacques, who's all about protecting humans from non-humans. And our favorite memory-challenged Witcher keeps accidentally stumbling into increasingly complex political situations while just trying to track down these Salamandra guys. Everything gets even more complicated when Alvin starts having terrifying visions about the White Frost, basically an apocalyptic ice age that's coming to destroy everything. Both women try to help the traumatized kid cope with these visions, and we have to choose who gets custody of him. And in true Witcher fashion, there's no obvious right answer here, just different flavors of morally ambiguous consequences. As Geralt digs deeper into Salamandra, he discovers they're performing horrific experiments combining Witcher mutagens with magic. The investigation takes us through all parts of Vizima, swamps with mysterious frog people, criminal hideouts, and brothels where we meet information brokers with unpronounceable names. And speaking of brothels, this is where the game really leans into Geralt's Witcher stamina. Beyond just choosing between Triss and Shani, we can pursue all these side romances with various characters throughout Vizima. Each successful conquest even rewards us with a collectible romance card. These flings don't impact the main romantic choices, but they certainly add some colorful distractions to Geralt's detective work. Things take a dark turn when we learn the Order isn't just anti-non-human. They're actively creating mutant soldiers using the stolen Witcher secrets. This forces us to pick sides in Vizima's brewing civil war, support the xenophobic Order, back the terrorist elven Scoia'tael, or try to remain neutral in a conflict that absolutely refuses to let you stay uninvolved. Both Triss and Shani react to these choices, adding another layer to our relationships. Meanwhile, Alvin's powers keep growing more unstable, like a magical time bomb just waiting to go off. His struggles with these abilities become a perfect mirror for all these bigger themes about power, responsibility, and the price of knowledge that run through the entire game. And as Vizima reaches full-on chaos mode, we discover Grandmaster Jacques has seen visions of the White Frost too, and his extreme methods suddenly start making a twisted kind of sense. He's trying to save humanity from an apocalyptic future, no matter how many people he has to sacrifice along the way. Everything reaches a breaking point when Alvin gets caught in the middle of a battle between elves and the Order in a quaint little village called Murky Waters. The kid panics and just poof, teleports himself away, completely vanishing. This disappearance absolutely wrecks both Triss and Shani, who blame themselves and each other for failing to protect him. But more importantly, it sets up what might be the biggest plot twist in the entire game. As Vizima descends into full-blown civil war, Geralt finally confronts Grandmaster Jacques in his stronghold, and that's when the truth hits like a truck. Jacques is actually Alvin, all grown up. When Alvin teleported from Murky Waters, he actually time-traveled to the past. There's evidence supporting this. Both characters have identical magic-suppressing pendants, with Jacques' showing years of age, and later in Witcher 3 there's even a letter that confirms it. The final showdown has Geralt chasing Jacques into a bizarre ice dimension that represents the apocalyptic future he's so terrified of. If you sided with Triss romantically, she proves her loyalty by helping Geralt navigate this supernatural realm, casting a lightning storm spell that zaps any enemies in your path. In the middle of all this chaos, the King of the Wild Hunt himself shows up demanding Jacques' soul. This moment becomes way more significant later when we learn about the Wild Hunt's connection to Geralt's missing memories, though at this point we have no idea what's going on. The game gives us the choice to either hand Jacques over to the Wild Hunt or deal with him ourselves. After dealing with Jacques and the Wild Hunt, Geralt returns to find Vizima in absolute chaos. King Foltest finally shows up to restore order, and Triss helps negotiate peace as a royal advisor. The exact outcome varies based on all our choices throughout the game, but regardless of our path, Triss stands by Geralt while keeping her own political position secure. If we chose to romance her, the ending suggests their relationship deepens. If we went with Shani or stayed single, Triss remains a close friend and advisor, clearly hoping for another chance in the future. Let's now fast forward to The Witcher 2, and the game wastes zero time establishing where things stand romantically. It opens with our favorite monster hunting heartthrob literally in bed with Triss Merigold. Their relationship has obviously blossomed since the first game, with Triss now fully embracing her dual role as both royal advisor and Geralt's lover. We find them in King Foltest's military camp, where Geralt's working as the king's personal bodyguard, while Triss navigates the treacherous waters of court politics. Their morning cuddle session gets interrupted by urgent royal business, but that brief scene shows us how their relationship has evolved. There's an easy intimacy between them now, though Triss is still carrying that massive secret about Geralt's past life with Yennefer. The peacefulness doesn't last long. During a castle siege, Foltest gets assassinated by a mysterious witcher right under Geralt's nose. Our white-haired hero immediately gets blamed for the king's death and thrown in the dungeon. And where's Triss during all this? Turns out even being a royal advisor and powerful sorceress doesn't help much when your boyfriend is accused of killing the king. Some relationship perks just don't extend to high treason. This is where we meet Vernon Roche, an incredibly intense commander of Temeria's special forces who, for some reason, believes in Geralt's innocence. With his help and some magical assistance from Triss, our Witcher breaks out of prison, and the three form an unlikely alliance to track down the real killer. Things get more interesting when the trio reaches Flotsam, a frontier town that basically exists as a collection of secrets with some buildings attached. Triss really steps up here, using her magic to help investigate the assassination, showing us a more active, capable side of her character beyond just being Geralt's girlfriend. But this is also where we start seeing cracks in their relationship. As Geralt continues hunting the Kingslayer, fragments of his past begin resurfacing, including these hazy memories of a certain violet-eyed, raven-haired sorceress. And you can practically see Triss walking a tightrope, trying to be supportive while still not mentioning Yennefer. Now we need to talk about the infamous Rose of Remembrance quest. On the surface, it looks so innocent. Geralt asks Triss to help restore his memories, and she agrees, but first sends him to retrieve a magical flower from an ancient elven garden. Sounds romantic, right? Well, according to this wild fan theory that's gained serious traction, the Rose of Remembrance isn't a symbol of love at all. It's actually a tool for magical manipulation. The theory suggests that when Triss sends Geralt to fetch this flower, she's not planning to restore his memories, but is actually plotting to mind control him. The evidence is fascinating. There's the dragon Saskia's strange behavior after being cured with the rose, the revelation that the rose petal was completely unnecessary for the healing ritual, and Triss's suspicious secrecy about the flower's significance. The smoking gun is Triss's cryptic response when questioned about the rose in The Witcher 3, calling it a warning.
Yes, Geralt?
See, you kept the Rose of Remembrance I gave you in Flotsam.
Seems so long ago. Probably because so much has changed.
So, sentimental value. That why you kept it?
Partly, though more as a warning.
But back to the game now. Making things more complicated, we learn about the Lodge of Sorceresses and their shadowy political agenda. Triss is caught between her love for Geralt and her obligations to her magical sisters, creating a genuine tension that makes her character more sympathetic, even as her actions get increasingly questionable. The early game also introduces us to Vess, Roche's fierce right-hand woman in the Blue Stripes Special Forces. She's an incredible warrior who's fought her way up through the ranks of an overwhelmingly male military organization, earning every scrap of respect through sheer combat skill. The first time we meet Vess, we find her casually breaking a prisoner's fingers in Flotsam's dungeon. As Roche's second-in-command in the Blue Stripes, she's earned her reputation as one of the deadliest members of Temeria's special forces. And when she meets Geralt, there's an immediate understanding that she couldn't care less about his legendary Witcher status. She's seen enough to know that reputations rarely match reality. Their potential romance unfolds in a direct way during a quest called Av Henselt, where Vess literally challenges Geralt to a duel. And this isn't some flirty sparring session. She demands Geralt fight her seriously to prove she's not just being kept around as the girl in the Blue Stripes. After a proper fight where neither holds back, they end up sharing war stories in the military camp. One thing leads to another, and let's just say Vess proves she's just as commanding in private as she is on the battlefield. Poor Triss is definitely not going to be thrilled about this development. What makes choosing Vess as a romance option interesting isn't that she's somehow simpler than Triss. It's that she represents a completely different kind of strength. While Triss is navigating political landmines and magical conspiracies, Vess confronts her battles head-on. She's not interested in protecting Geralt or changing him or binding their destinies together. They're just two warriors finding brief comfort in each other while the world crumbles around them. It's not about epic romance or magical destiny. It's about mutual respect, desire, and genuinely living in the moment. Our heroes eventually escape Flotsam, but not before everything goes spectacularly wrong. After this massive revelation about a dragon attacking nearby, Triss gets kidnapped by Letho's accomplice. This pivotal moment forces us to make our first huge narrative choice: chase after Triss or help Roche pursue a completely different lead. And this decision doesn't just affect a quest or two, it splits the entire game into two separate stories. If we choose to follow Triss's trail, we end up working with the Scoia'tael leader Iorveth, a terrorist or freedom fighter depending on who you ask. But if we choose to help Roche, we go down a completely different path involving the Kingdom of Kaedwen. The split is so complete that we literally cannot see both sides in a single playthrough. These are two completely different games from this point on. Following the Iorveth path, we track Triss to a Nilfgaardian camp where she's being held prisoner and caught up in a complex plot involving the Lodge of Sorceresses. Here we see her at her most vulnerable, no longer the confident royal advisor, but a woman genuinely trapped between loyalty to her fellow sorceresses and her love for Geralt. There's this moment when Geralt rescues her and mentions he's not working with the other women of the lodge, and you can almost see Triss's heart do a little victory dance, thinking she's won Geralt's loyalty completely. On Roche's path, Vess becomes a much more prominent character as the Blue Stripes get entangled in King Henselt's military campaign. Her story takes an incredibly dark turn when Henselt's men assault her, leading to this powerful sequence where she confronts both her trauma and her place in the unit. Both paths eventually reveal this massive conspiracy involving the Lodge of Sorceresses, though we see different angles of it depending on which path we chose. And the plot reaches its boiling point when we discover Saskia is actually a dragon under magical control. On Iorveth's path, Triss helps break this control. On Roche's path, Vess helps uncover evidence of the conspiracy. Both women prove crucial to the story, but in ways that reflect their distinct characters. As everything barrels toward the conclusion, both Triss and Vess face these moments of truth about their loyalties. Triss has to choose between her fellow sorceresses and Geralt, while Vess confronts the corruption in her own organization, with both women ultimately having to decide what they truly stand for. The ending unfolds in the ancient city of Loch Muin, where all these political threads, romantic entanglements, and witcherly investigations finally come together. Everything explodes into chaos when Letho, our bald Kingslayer friend, decides to reveal everything. Turns out he was working for Nilfgaard the whole time, which is such a classic Nilfgaard move, using the assassinations to destabilize the northern kingdoms. But here's the real bombshell. He casually reminds Geralt that they had previously worked together to rescue Yennefer from the Wild Hunt. The same Yennefer that Triss has been conspicuously not mentioning for 2 entire games. The final showdown with Letho gives us this pivotal choice. We can fight him to the death or let him walk away. Either way, the bombshell truth remains. The Nilfgaardian Empire is coming, and they've been pulling everyone's strings like master puppeteers the entire time. The game closes with Geralt finally recovering crucial pieces of his memory about Yennefer and the Wild Hunt, setting us up for the 3rd game. If we've been romancing Triss through this journey, she stands by Geralt despite these revelations, though there's this palpable nervous tension about what these recovered memories might mean for their relationship. And if we chose Vess instead, well, she's got an entire country to rebuild, and frankly probably doesn't have time for all this Witcher relationship drama anyway. And that brings us to The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which opens with what has to be gaming's most effective "Your Ex is Back" scenario. We get Geralt literally dreaming about Yennefer lounging at Kaer Morhen. No epic battles, no political backstabbing, just our favorite monster hunter being haunted by memories of raven hair and lilac perfume. We find Geralt bathing, completely relaxed in his birthday suit, while Yennefer readies herself at a nearby vanity, also in her birthday suit. This scene immediately tells us this wasn't just some casual fling, there's history here, deep history. Geralt even admits that Yennefer has occupied his every thought, which is a pretty bold claim considering the past 2 games worth of romance options he's potentially explored, but that's memory recovery for you. There's clearly all this unfinished business between these two, and it's about to massively complicate everyone's lives, especially that of Triss. Speaking of whom, she's conspicuously absent from both the dream sequence and the beginning of the game, a narrative choice that really sets the tone for the shifting romantic dynamics ahead. The dream becomes reality when Geralt receives this very formal letter from Yennefer requesting his presence near Vizima. Poor Vesemir tries to offer some fatherly advice about getting involved with sorceresses again, but we all know how well Geralt listens to relationship guidance. Besides, this is Yennefer we're talking about. Saying no to her isn't really an option that exists in this universe. Before heading to this destined reunion, Geralt and Vesemir hunt down a griffin, giving us time to process that this isn't just any ex coming back into Geralt's life, it's the ex, the one even amnesia couldn't completely erase. Meanwhile, Triss is somewhere in Novigrad, probably sensing a disturbance in the Force that means her relatively drama-free relationship with Geralt is about to get extraordinarily complicated. The actual reunion happens when Yennefer gets word of a white-haired witcher causing trouble in White Orchard. She immediately knows it's our boy Geralt, so she tracks him down. At this point, they're essentially hunting each other, with Yennefer being too impatient to wait for her witcher to find her. Their reunion is exactly as awkward as you'd expect. Yennefer is every bit as commanding and mysterious as ever, casually dropping world-changing information about Ciri while giving Geralt loaded looks that practically scream, "We have so much to discuss." Geralt immediately brings up his steamy dream, but just as he's about to get into the juicy details, the Wild Hunt crashes their reunion party. In classic Yennefer fashion, she saves the day with her magical lightning powers, showing us right from the start that she's not someone who needs rescuing. She does the rescuing herself. Once they're safe, Yennefer brings Geralt up to speed on all things Ciri, mentioning that their adoptive daughter might have been in Novigrad. She sends him to investigate and meet with a special mutual acquaintance for help. And in this moment, you can practically feel Geralt questioning every life choice that led him here, especially any involving a certain red-headed sorceress. The elephant in the room doesn't stay hidden for long. Yennefer clearly knows about Geralt and Triss. She makes a passive-aggressive comment about them making such a great couple, and Geralt immediately plays the amnesia card. Yennefer is not buying it for a second, letting a bit of jealousy slip through her cool exterior and revealing she still has feelings for him too. By the time Geralt sets out to search for Ciri, we already understand the emotional stakes. He's caught between Yennefer, his magically destined but infinitely complicated love, and Triss, his chosen but potentially temporary one. The game has set up what might be gaming's most complicated love triangle, where every choice feels meaningful and no option is clearly right. The main quest follows Geralt tracking Ciri across 3 major regions, with both sorceresses playing crucial but completely different roles in this search. Novigrad brings us face-to-face with Triss again, and what a reunion it is. We find her helping persecuted mages escape witch hunters, and she is now a sorceress in hiding due to anti-magic sentiment. Quite the fall from her previous royal advisor status. The tension between her and Geralt is palpable. There's clearly still something there, but Yennefer's shadow looms over every interaction. During the quest Now or Never, we face our first major romantic choice. Let Triss sail away to Kovir, or confess our love and ask her to stay. Meanwhile, Yennefer's been busy in Skellige doing ethically questionable things to find Ciri. When Geralt catches up with her, we see how well they work together to uncover information. They think similarly and complement each other's strengths, knowing exactly what the other is thinking. Geralt takes every opportunity to make moves on Yennefer, hoping to rekindle their passion. And Yen is clearly on the same page, even keeping that infamous stuffed unicorn on standby for their, special activities. The quest, The Last Wish, gives us one of the game's most complex relationship moments. It forces both Geralt and us as players to confront the biggest question in the Witcher romance universe: is their love real or just djinn magic? Breaking the djinn's spell means potentially breaking their relationship, but keeping it means never knowing if their feelings are genuine. As if these personal dramas weren't complicated enough, both women get entangled in the larger political plot involving the Wild Hunt. Triss works behind the scenes in Novigrad, gathering allies and information, while Yennefer takes a more direct approach, like casually desecrating sacred gardens and raising the dead. If we've been trying to romance both sorceresses, you ambitious devil, this is where it all falls apart spectacularly. Turns out powerful sorceresses talk to each other, and the resulting scene involves a very naked Geralt, some strategically placed handcuffs, and an entertaining lesson about 2 timing magical women. The story converges on Kaer Morhen for the big showdown with the Wild Hunt. The preparation for the battle shows both women at their absolute best. Triss coordinating with other mages and setting up defenses, while Yennefer works on more direct magical protections. Their different approaches to problem-solving shine here. Triss builds networks and plans carefully, while Yen just bulldozes through obstacles with raw power and determination. After the battle's tragic conclusion, poor Vesemir, the story moves toward its ending, with both sorceresses playing vital roles in the final battle against the Wild Hunt. However, how they're involved depends heavily on our romantic choices throughout the game. A committed relationship with either woman leads to unique scenes and dialogue that add extra emotional weight to the journey, making the ending feel personal rather than generic. After Ciri's confrontation with the White Frost, Geralt's romantic journey reaches its own conclusion. And what I find fascinating is how the game gives us these two completely different, yet equally valid happy endings based on our choices. For those who stuck with Team Yen through all the complications, and at least one very memorable stuffed unicorn encounter, we get what has to be one of gaming's most earned happy endings. Geralt and Yennefer finally retire together, settling into a cozy little house where they can spend their days doing, well, whatever retired witchers and centuries-old sorceresses do with their endless free time. It's a perfect culmination of their tumultuous journey together. But the Triss ending isn't just some consolation prize. It offers a completely different flavor of happily ever after. Choose the redhead, and Geralt heads north to Kovir, where Triss has established herself as a respected political advisor. It's definitely the more politically advantageous ending. Geralt still hunts monsters occasionally, but now he has a warm home and loving partner to return to between contracts. The Blood and Wine expansion adds an extra sweet touch to whichever romance we chose, where our sorceress actually comes to visit Geralt at his vineyard in Toussaint. And their personalities shine through even here. Yennefer immediately starts redecorating while Triss brings her own special warmth to the place. And if we somehow manage to end up alone after all this romantic drama, well, at least Dandelion comes to visit, though his decorating choices are questionable at best. With Yennefer, the ending is all about finally embracing their shared destiny. No more running, no more games, just two people who've literally been through hell finally finding peace together. It feels like the perfect conclusion to an epic fantasy romance novel. The Triss ending, by contrast, is about actively choosing to build something new. There's less talk of destiny and more emphasis on choice. Geralt deciding to start fresh with someone who represents a different kind of relationship. It's sweet in its own way, even if some book purists are probably clutching their copies of The Last Wish in absolute horror. What makes both endings so satisfying is that they give us something genuinely rare in gaming. A mature, complex love story with no clear right answer. Whether we choose the tempestuous but destined love of Yennefer or the warmer chosen love of Triss, we get an ending that feels both earned and authentic to our version of Geralt. Of course, for those going for absolute chaos, there's always the option to ignore both sorceresses entirely and spend retirement playing Gwent in every tavern from Vizima to Toussaint. But let's be real, no card game, no matter how addictive, can quite compare to the love of a good sorceress. Whether we're Team Triss, Team Yen, or Team Eternal Bachelor, The Witcher 3 sends Geralt off with exactly the ending he, and we, chose for him. And I think that's what makes this love triangle so special in gaming history. Unlike most games where romance is just a side activity with minimal impact, the Witcher series made these relationships central to the story, giving them the depth, complexity, and consequences they deserve. What started as a magical djinn wish became this sprawling, decade-spanning love story that players could genuinely shape according to their own values and desires.